Now that we have some data, I'd like to point out some of the features of the Logger Pro. So I'll switch over to the Logger Pro screen. It's a standard Windows type menu, and I'll just run through these briefly one by one to point out some of the features that may not be so obvious. File gives you the capabilities that are quite common, such as save, open, print. Note that Logger Pro is capable of importing and exporting to other worksheets, such as Excel, if you wish to analyze the data in a different worksheet. Edit has the standard features such as cut, copy, select. The experiment menu allows you to set up the interface, in other words, to set up the sensors. This would be most useful if you're using the Logger Pro Lab Pro system as an independent logger for other experiments. One feature that may be useful is the software calibrate. I'll be talking about hardware calibration, like electronically, in a later clip. That's the way we suggest calibrating, but it's also possible to calibrate in software. For example, if we're interested in calibrating the first channel, the voltage for the PTAC, we can put in the equation. And by the way, we can only calibrate in a linear fashion. The sensors have to be linear sensors. So if we know the equation, we can put in the slope and intercept. Otherwise, we can actually calibrate on values given to the sensors. By entering the known values for two different levels of the sensor output. The data menu is useful for manipulating the data sets, but most importantly, it has the capability of introducing new calculations or new variables through the new calculated column command. You can actually see the equations in a column by double-clicking on the column header. For example, in the zeroed flow column, we have the equation here. If you so desire, you have access to changing these equations or introducing new equations. Logger Pro provides an extensive set of functions such as calculus, smoothing, trigonometric, and so forth. You have access to the variables that have been defined. There's probably 40 or 50 in this template. And finally, you have access to the parameters. These are more like global parameters that are used a lot. These parameters can be viewed in the data menu under user parameters. You can define them in here. Next, the analyze command is very useful. It allows you to analyze the data. For example, if you're interested in a region of the data, such as an exhale peak, you can define that region by dragging the cursor, and the region will become gray. Now, using the Analyze menu, you can do various statistics, integrals, curve fitting. You can linear fit or even fit with more complicated polynomials and even define your own equations. For example, if we wanted to do an integral of the flow, that will give us, just leaving the flow as the only parameter to be integrated. Integrate the flow, you get the volume during that region. In other words, the exhale volume. So analyze is quite useful. One other feature of analyze that might be useful is the examine. This allows you to put on a cursor and examine the data point by point. The insert command can be useful. It allows you to put in extra graphs, additional tables, meters, so forth. It also allows you to put text on your graphs or even import pictures and movies. The option command is, I find, most useful for graph options. It allows you to put in labels and titles and legends, but more importantly, it allows you access to the axes. There are two y-axes on the right and the left, and you can select whatever parameters you would like to be plotted on these axes by just checking in the boxes. Also, you have access to the scaling of these two axes. You can either have an auto scale or a manual scale, and you can change the maximum and minimum values. You have access to what parameter is used as the independent x parameter. You can change the type of graph. I have a strip chart set up, but you can also have a manual chart, for example, which will give you the entire data set. The page command is very useful, and I'll talk more about that in a later clip, but it allows you to add extra pages. If you insert graphs or tables, you will very quickly find that the first page here becomes quite cluttered. This can be alleviated by adding new pages and putting the graphs or tables there. As I said, I'll talk more about this in a later clip. Finally, Logger Pro has a very extensive help menu which will guide you through problems that you have with the data analysis.